celebrating the power of possibility.
Hi, I'm Cassius Cash, and I believe anything is possible.
This is Anything is Possible. Great stories about great people whose lives prove that anything is possible. And I have been excited about this interview. Cassius Cash is the superintendent of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here with you, Howard.
I want to start by talking about the park first. It is the most visited of our national park system. It's beautiful, it's magnificent. Talk to me a little bit about the Great Smoky Mountains National Park.
Yeah, it is a natural wonder. It's most visited, a lot of people don't know, but it's within an 8 hours drive of half of the United States population. So think about that. I'm originally from Memphis. It takes me 7 hours to get home. That same 7 hours I can be in Washington, D.C., and you name it. So people drive from all around the country to be in the Smokies to have that national park experience. But not only for that, the Smokies is a very special place because it's considered to be a temperate rainforest. And when you think about—
I did not know that it's considered to be a rainforest.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a rainforest. We have over 20,000 species that are listed. So think about this. We have 150 species of different trees. That's more than all of Europe, right? Think about, we have over 1,000 new species that are discovered that are new to science. So it's also the most researched park in the national park system as well. 200 species of birds. We're the salamander capital of the world. We have 31 different species of salamanders. We just discovered a new salamander, the black-bellied Cherokee salamander last year. So in addition to all the hiking opportunities, over, about 900 miles of trails and over 300 miles of road, I'm sounding like a nerd right now, but I just get excited when you talk about what that park does for so many people.
How big is the park?
It's 500,000 square miles, 500,000 acres, excuse me. That's evenly split between the states of Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina. It's 800 square miles around the park. So it's a large landmass, and the crest of it is an unchained crest that runs about 36 miles, the peaks of the Smokies. And a lot of people don't know that the Smoky mountain range is one of the oldest mountain ranges in the world, dating back 200 million years. So that's pretty old. That's older than the Rockies, right? And so there's a lot of things that, that make the Smokies very spectacular.
You know what's spectacular is that much of a landmass reserved as a national park. Mm-hmm. That was all of that would be prime real estate.
Absolutely.
I remember, and this might have been prior to you coming, but there was a big concern about the traffic through the Smokies and what it was doing to flora and fauna and all of the, emissions from the vehicles.
Right.
And there had been a pretty major health study done on the health of the park.
Right.
And I don't think I've asked you about that.
Yeah, I talked about how spectacular the park is. I'll be remiss in not talking about the spectacular people that we have that help me manage the park. And so we have folks that are specialized in air quality, I think is what you're talking about. And we have a lot of research stations located throughout the park to kind of monitor air quality, which in turns affects human health, right? And so before I got here, they told me that the air quality was so bad here that they compared it to Atlanta. So when you think about that,
right?
Yeah. So when you think about national parks, you think about clean air and clean water. Well, we were going the wrong direction on that. And so with mitigations that we've worked with nuclear sites around that are close by and emission standards, we've been able to reduce emissions in the air, which now you can see the mountain ranges around the park. And so we've made substantial progress in the air quality. That park is so delicate. It tells you when things are out of whack. And so we have people that can look at leaves and tell if we have acid rain coming down in high elevations, or when soil chemistry is unbalanced. And so we study, monitor, and research those things to make sure that we're making good decisions. And we share that kind of research with other agencies too that have similar concerns that we do.
Possibility powered by Pilot Flying J, Covenant Health, Home Federal, and the Knoxville News Sentinel.
How does a kid growing up in Memphis end up being the first African American superintendent of the nation's premier and most visited national park?
Yeah, you'd be surprised. That's the question I get asked the most, right? And it's a story that I'm proud of, and I think, again, which makes me so honored to be here, because anything is possible. And I remember being a kid, growing up in Memphis, and let me first talk about my mom and dad, because all this comes into play, right?
Yeah.
So my dad is a retired police officer in Memphis, and he used to tell me about all the, of course, the typical police officer stories. But one of the things that really moved me was when he would help families out, right? Or pull that knucklehead son to the side and give him guidance, and then that person grows up to be a productive citizen. I used to love hearing those stories. My mom was a cosmetologist, but she just didn't do hair pieces, typical hair pieces. She did them for kids that were about to undergo chemotherapy treatment at St. Jude Hospital. And I remember sometimes when they would come to the house and she would place those hair pieces on them and see that dignity restored in that kid as they fight for their lives and take on big battles to live. That gave me a sense of, I like that feeling, that I want to help people. That's what gave me a sense and purpose of life. So I went on to study to be a doctor, because in my mind, people that look, I wanted to help people, and most importantly, I saw people that looked like me that did that kind of job. After church every Sunday, I used to come home and I watched this show, and you're probably old enough now, you got the gray going on, right? This show, you remember Mutual of Omaha, Wild Kingdom?
Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
Wild Kingdom. Oh. And I used to love watching that, not only for what the folks were doing as far as protecting habitats and protecting animals, but it tapped my imagination. I can be in the Serengetis one week, I can be in the Everglades one week, and as a kid from Memphis, that was pretty awesome. But I didn't see anyone that looked like me doing that kind of job, right? So that wasn't, at that time, things were not possible as far as if there's something I want to do. So moving forward to college, I was going to band practice, and someone says, hey, the Forest Service is in town and they're interviewing for a wildlife biologist position. I had no clue of what the Forest Service was. And I thought, and the thing that came to mind was Smoky the bear, right? That's, only you, forest fire, and so for forest fire. So I went into this interview just to practice my interviewing skills, right? Because that's something they always told you need to do. Went through the interview and I was doing horrible, Halloran. I mean, I'm a pre-med biology student and they are interviewing for a wildlife biologist position. But the thing that turned that whole conversation around was I was a Boy Scout. I was an avid Boy Scout, and I used to love being out in the woods. And so from there, I had some relationship with the natural world. And by the grace of God and them taking a chance, they offered me to be an intern as a wildlife biologist. The toughest part about this, Halloran, was not necessarily getting the internship. Guess who had to go back and tell her that I wasn't going to be that doctor? Mom. Right?
Mom was counting on
Mom was counting on it.
She's at the salon telling them my baby's going to be a doctor.
Exactly. That's exactly what she was telling me. So when I told her that I was going to be a wildlife intern out in Washington State, in her mind, I'm sending my baby to go be with Bigfoot. She wasn't having that, right? So I tell people that's the first and last argument that I've ever had with my mom, but I was so committed that I wanted to do something that I watched on TV. So I packed up and did it. So started as a wildlife biologist, and I moved around and 31 years later, I'm here with you talking about my journey.
You've seen administrations change,
Yeah,
and they kept you here.
kept me here, yep.
And I watched something happen, Superintendent Cash. I watched something happen. I want to bear witness to this. I watched when you first arrived in this community, you first took the job. I watched the region and the community go, you know what I'm talking about too.
Right.
I've watched the pendulum swing totally the other way. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, the people of East Tennessee, the people of Western North Carolina and East Tennessee, they love the way people talk about you. And I meet people all over the state. Man, this community has come to embrace you. Have you felt that?
I have, and that's with effort, and because relationships is what has gotten me through, right? And I've learned that from my mom and dad. Relationships is what it's all about, to find those areas of common interest. And the common interest in this play is that place called the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, that we all love it. And I remember when I first got here and they said, well, we love the park, and I would respond back, and we love you. And so I make sure, and that park was designed, a lot of people don't know, that park was designed specifically so that the community could benefit. You notice there are no hotels and no type of establishments in that park like you would find in other big parks of similar size. That's by design.
They push the business out.
Push the business out. So now $1.2 billion later, which is what the park generates as far as tourism, it's very important that we work hand in hand and provide that experience. And what makes the Smoky so unique, the amount of repeat visitors. It's where connections are made, it's where memories are made, and it's handed down from generation to generation.
I'm proud of the work that you're doing. I'm proud of the marker you're making, because someone coming behind you can see you in that position and then see that it is actually possible. But then I know you have this deep passion through some of the initiatives that you're rolling out to have more people have a profound experience in these mountains.
Right.
Talk about some of the initiatives you're rolling out.
Well, I tell people that to be the superintendent of the most visited national park is an absolute honor. That goes without saying. But to do my job, I need to make sure that we not only get caught up in how many people are coming, it's going to be who's coming to the park in the next 20 years. And it is very important to me personally, as the first African American superintendent of this park, that everyone from all walks of life see themselves in this story, can see themselves in this park. We created an initiative, it's called the African American Experiences. A lot of people don't know that there are African American graves in the Smokies.
Really?
There are a lot of things we're still learning. African American graves are pointing north and south, where the other graves are pointing east and west. I mean, tell me about that story.
Wait. Do you know that story?
I do not. I mean,
so they're figuring that out.
We're researching
but all
that
the
now.
African American graves are pointed north and south.
Right.
And then the other graves,
East and west.
That's interesting.
Yeah. The Smokies is still telling us a story, and I'm so glad to be able to turn the next chapter in revealing how special this place is, in addition to the recreation, but the human dynamic piece. And I think that's what people are drawn to. The indigenous people, I introduced myself as the superintendent of Great Smoky Mountains National Park, ancestral lands of the Cherokee Indians. Can't forget that, right? And that's a story and that's a history that I'm continuously learning and making sure that we keep those stories alive as well.
How do the Cherokee feel about the park?
Well, I think we've come a long way, and I would not be truthful with you to say that there were times I described that was pretty crunchy based on just the history.
Right.
When you talk about the Indian Removal Act, I mean, that was a sense of loss, no different than when the early settlers had to leave their home. Your lifestyle and your home, you're moved from that, and that's handed down from tradition. But I've been able to meet them where they are and learn. I come humble, and I want to learn about the traditional practices, the richness, and I think learning their history makes me a better leader, right? It makes me a better person. And it's those things that I've moved around the country that I've been able to compile and make sure that I understand the sensitivities So, for instance, we're one of the first parks in this region to establish an agreement to where the indigenous citizens can legally come in the park and harvest traditional plants that they use for different dietary needs and that. And we went to the tribal leadership looking for yes, how we can do it, to not saying no, why you can't. And I think just that approach has been really great, and the chief and I are really, we're friends now, you know? So I take pride in that effort. The park served an integral part for me during COVID. Remember me, and this was, and I'm gonna bring this up because it just shows how the natural world can be a place of healing as well. If you remember, during COVID, the world was in unrest during George Floyd.
Right.
It was a moment in time in history where everybody saw the same thing because people weren't going to work as much, and everybody was crammed up in their house, and we saw something that really shook the core of this country and around the world. And remembering that my dad is a police officer, I'm thinking about this as the first African American at this park. You know, I was in a bad space mentally. And I think a lot of people understand, because of COVID, the importance of mental health. One of the things I always rely on is, I tell people when I go into the woods, I always come out better than when I went in, right? And so I needed to find myself in some new headspace on what the world was going through and what my kids were experiencing during this. So I took a hike, and sure enough, my head was clear, and I found that I was becoming at peace and trying to put things together as I was hiking. And during that hike, I said, oh my God, if I'm experiencing this, what would this do for my community to be able to use this resource for your mental health? And so there I came up with an initiative. It's called Smoky's Hikes for Healing. And what I did, Halloran, is that I designed 4 hikes on each side of the mountain, 4 on the Tennessee side, 4 on the North Carolina side. And I decided to only take 10 people because COVID was still at its prominence then. But during this process, that people would have to apply to take this hike with me to talk about the value of diversity in using the park as the most biodiverse ecosystem in the national park system, right?
Wow.
And so they would have to talk about what this would do for them. And we found a outstanding facilitator to help us walk through that. How we walked in as strangers, but there were a lot of tears, there was a lot of hugging, and there were a lot of people staying in contact about how we can make our communities better. Wow. And we use that park as a backdrop for that. It's amazing that we're in awe of the biodiversity of the Smokies and how that ecosystem works. But in our own ecosystem, we have a problem with it, right?
That's so good.
And so I've used initiatives like that to help me better define my why. Why am I here? What I do is I'm the superintendent of the Smokies, but my pieces of why links back to me wanting to help people.
That's what I was just going to say that to you, that you witnessed your father and your mother, you know, doing hair pieces for cancer patients, your father going above and beyond the call of duty to improve people's lives, to protect and serve. Right. And God finding a way and a window to use these mountains to heal you during a tough time, but then to give you the courage to extend that healing to other people.
One of the things that people ask me is, what keeps me up at night as a superintendent of a park of this size? And it is my employee safety. And when I first got here, Halloran, it was 10 million people coming to this park. As I shared with you, just year before last, we had 14 million people. But yet, my folks are still trying to provide the service of visitation from a decade ago. We've lost 30% of our workforce. And so you have a flat budget that you're losing spending power on because of inflation. You have visitation that's going up, and you have employee
Right.
levels going down, there's not a Fortune 500 company
Right.
that can sustain itself off of
Right.
that, right? And the expectation of the visitor stays the same, as far as what they want their toilets to look like, what they want their rows to feel like, and all those things. And so, to help my employees, I felt that we had to do something, not only for the employees of today, but being in the forever business, we needed to do something to project to make sure that we carry out the mission of the National Park Service. And so that's why moving with Park It Forward was a very initially scary initiative, because I knew that there were going to be some angst about that because of what people understood and how they interact with this park. But we all owe it to that park. And I believe the people that had to be moved out of that park in order to create it, I think they would be honored by it, to be honest with you. Because if I'm gonna leave my lifestyle and my home to share with millions of people across the country, you need to make sure that this story and this land that we care about so much is kept in place with perpetuity. And Park It Forward allows us to have the resources, financial resources, to take care of those facilities and to be able to get more staff in the park.
I think it's fantastic. It's great. This little guy from Memphis, as the old folks used to say, you done good. Thanks for being on Anything Is Possible.
Thank you, sir.